want to talk about spooks in your head? Suicides, homicides,
a mom's boyfriend abusing her son,
plane crashes, etc.
Doing CPR on a little 1-year-old.
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
What is the #1 cause of death for police officers in this country?
Suicide.
It's policy with most departments, workers' comps, to deny any kind of a stress claim.
PTSD drove me to become a mental case.
The department let him down.
What's the reluctance to recognize this?
Money.
This is the vest that I wore for the most of my career for gangs.
Nate Schlitz spent a dozen years working as a police officer in the Phoenix suburb of Mesa, Arizona, until post-traumatic stress disorder forced him into an early retirement.
My first year, there was an officer-involved shooting where it involved a pursuit of someone who was suicidal, and he ended up driving at some officers, and about 14 officers shot and unfortunately killed this guy who was trying to run them over. That was my first kind of eye-opening event.
Was it witnessing the loss of a human life? Was it seeing that you yourself were suddenly in very real human danger? What was it?
I think it was more realizing that, you know, this could happen to me very easily. It's going to happen a lot. My life could be in danger. There were so many things like a mom's boyfriend abusing her son, doing CPR. Doing CPR. On a little 1-year-old that mom's boyfriend beat to death. Doing CPR so well that the fire department leaves you doing CPR even after they get you there. And I probably did CPR for 10 minutes on this kid that we knew there was no chance. And then going with him to the hospital and staying with his body for the remainder of the investigation.
Schlitz, who's written about his PTSD for the police magazine American Police Beat, describes his trauma as a bucket. Incidents, like the abused child, kept filling it up until his mental capacity to hold it together overflowed.
Yeah, Assistant Chief Meza at the time.
Tell me about the incident that changed your career forever.
So May 28th, 2009, I was a gang detective. We happened to be close to a call of a fight that came out. A black Mustang fled from the scene, so we went after them. Whoever was driving was trying to run my partner over, and I wasn't going to let him get hit, let him get run over, so I made the decision to shoot. I believe I shot 6 times, hit the driver, and he eventually stopped his actions. What no one knew is that his 15-year-old girlfriend was in the backseat of the car, and just the angle we were at, one of my rounds unfortunately hit her and killed her instantly. I could see someone slumped over in the backseat of the car, and that's when it really hit me that I had killed that person and that the person in the backseat hadn't been doing anything to me. Once the scene was secure, I just turned and walked into the desert just to get away from everything.
What was going through your mind when you walked away?
It was almost like an instant panic attack. Just the anxiety through the roof, started sweating profusely.
When were you diagnosed with PTSD?
I was diagnosed about 3 months after the shooting, and once I was actually diagnosed with the post-traumatic stress, I was given the option to go to a residential treatment program in California.
Did it help?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. To this day, I think it saved my life. And I was never...
That's a powerful statement.
Absolutely.
But for many officers dealing with PTSD, there's only suffering. According to a 2013 study which examined the mental health of active-duty American police officers, between 15 and 18% suffer from symptoms of PTSD, and most don't get the help they need.
It's a national scandal. It's a national scandal for law enforcement.
Ron Clark is a former Connecticut state trooper with the organization Badge of Life, which studies PTSD and the potential for deadly outcomes.
What is the #1 cause of death for police officers in this country?
Suicide. Suicide. It's 2 times as many as the ones that are killed. But that's the tip of the iceberg.
2 Charlie 18, 1 Charlie 11, code 4.
Underneath the iceberg are things like depression and anxiety and PTSD and all those things.
And these are officers
On patrol out there. We call them the walking wounded.
1 Charlie 19, copy.
Feeling confident after his treatment, Schlitz was soon back in uniform. But just a few months later, he found himself on the scene of another shooting. The symptoms of PTSD came roaring back, and his job performance took a direct hit.
My anger went through the roof. And it's not a good thing to have an angry cop out there when you have to deal with different incidents happening. I realized that my anger was so bad that it might lead to use of force issues, and big reasons why I had to step back and leave law enforcement was I didn't want to end up in prison with some of the people that I had put there.
Like many cops suffering with PTSD, Schlitz submitted a claim for workers' compensation, but his employer, the city of Mesa, initially denied it.
Unfortunately, it's policy with most departments' workers' comps to deny any kind of a stress claim because they don't believe it, quite frankly. They think that the employee is trying to pull one over on them or trying to misuse the system.
This year, after several police suicides in Arizona, state lawmakers debated a bill that would have added PTSD to the list of injuries covered by workers' compensation. The bill was defeated. Similar efforts have also failed in states that have seen horrible mass shootings, like Connecticut after Sandy Hook and Colorado after the movie theater massacre.
42 Charlie 18, what's your name?
America Tonight rode along with the Mesa Police, where even a routine night could be filled with anything but routine.
You're gonna fucking murder me! Murder me, murder me, murder me! You're gonna kill me right now!
No, we're not gonna kill you.
You're gonna murder me!
How many police departments actually recognize PTSD as a disability?
Well, there's only 5 states that recognize it for workman's comp.
What's the reluctance to recognize this?
They'll go bankrupt. They'll drain the town. They'll drain the system. Money.
Ron Clark says there are 100,000 active duty police in the U.S. with PTSD.
Your organization recommends annual mental health checkups
Absolutely.
for police officers.
Absolutely.
How many police agencies are doing this?
Not many. Very few.
Why not?
When we first put that concept, we were heretics. Heretics. It was, what are you, crazy? I mean, you do conferences and they'd look at you. Now they're starting to look. Makes sense. On an annual basis, you do a check-in.
What's at stake?
Lives. I think lives are at stake. It can only help the public. You know, happier, healthier officers means better interaction with the public, better customer service. How can it not help to take care of the people that take care of you?
Up next, we meet a retired narcotics investigator whose PTSD got him arrested for drugs.
You want to talk about spooks in your head?
This former New York State trooper retired in Florida almost 15 years ago,
Fish off.
seeking relaxation and a fresh start. Instead, he's haunted with a severe case of post-traumatic stress disorder, the result of responding to countless tragedies playing out in his mind over and over again.
You call these flashbacks like a slideshow.
Yes. My slide projector, as I call it, is post-traumatic stress disorder. the accumulative of fatal accidents I handled, suicides, homicides, plane crashes, etc. When I was doing them, it wasn't real. I'm going to be honest. We used to slab them, bag them, which wasn't the right thing. They were human beings, you know. But you were just, that's the way you were trained. Do your job.
For his safety, Mike asked we only use his first name. Second-guessing his actions has caused internal torture.
The ones that really is the dagger in the heart is the ones you feel responsible for killing, okay? It was I-95, and I was sergeant. Back then, truck tires, they would just put them underneath and chain them down with a chain.
Oh, the spare tires?
The spare tire. So this truck tire fell out, and it came right across the roof of a car, and there was a daughter and a mother in the car, and it came right to the windshield. So I was there within 30 seconds, and you could see the woman driving was pregnant, clear as a bell. Like 9 months pregnant. I always carry a pocket knife. I took that knife out. I was in the car. They're beheaded, so they're dead. And I went, like I've done with deer, just slice them and pull the deer out. I got that close. And so to this day I live with, if I would have did that, would that kid have lived? Or die? Anyway. Anyway, they died. They died, no. It was a triple fatal. So that's just one, you know.
Mike's trauma dates back to the beginning of his 22-and-a-half-year career when he patrolled vast stretches of highways in New York's Catskill Mountains.
One of my first calls, a 90-year-old man, lived up off this road, and once a day he left his porch to go across the street to check his mailbox. Once a day. Just so happens I'm working the day a drunk driver plows him and, you know, killed him. So that's 20, 30, 35 years later. I tell you, I'm driving down a back road. If I see somebody walk into their mailbox, guess what I think about?
You think of that guy?
I think of that guy. I get that flashback. This is from the Drug Enforcement Administration Civic Appreciation Police Officer of the Year. I have that award also.
For the most part, PTSD didn't seem to affect Mike's career. He rose through the ranks to become a highly decorated drug investigator. But after his retirement in 2001, PTSD took over, and his life took an unexpected turn.
Well, I started going to alcohol, and the alcohol led absolutely to drugs. Which, can you believe that? Half my life, I'm chasing drugs. I called it the devil's sperm, everything else. Whoa, wait a minute.
You'd spent years of your career trying to get that off the streets.
Put my life at jeopardy how many years? Every day of my life to clear the streets of it, to get people safe, to get people's kids that they don't use, end up on it. You want to talk about spooks in your head?
Drug and alcohol abuse took a terrible toll on Mike's family. In the middle of the night, he would disappear on his wife and children. He says he would get in his car and just drive for hours. Eventually, he found himself on the other side of the law. He was arrested, accused of impersonating a police officer after putting on his old drug enforcement jacket and parking in front of someone's house as if he were on a stakeout.
I was mentally unstable. I definitely was mental problem. 100%.
It was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. Just, oh, sorry. Just seeing him standing there in handcuffs.
Despite her initial shock, Debbie Ortiz says her husband's arrest turned out to be a life-saving blessing in disguise.
So they took me back to the judge's chambers, and I walked in there, and she says, honey, I think he has PTSD, and we need to help him. It was at that point that, for a lack of a better explanation, it was like, oh.
It all made sense.
It made sense. And he was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder.
So as he's starting that journey, What journey did you take?
Well, we were already in the process of a divorce proceeding. We were barely on speaking terms. When I received this information, I said, I can't just walk away. This man's in serious trouble, and I can't just walk away from him.
So Debbie, a professional writer, started searching online for information on PTSD among police officers. She was shocked to find very few resources.
I was like, okay, so how does this happen? How does, someone dedicate their life to helping others and enforcing the laws, and then end up in a position like this, and nobody's talking about it? And I went to my producing partner. We had a small production company. I said, I think I know what we're going to be doing embarking on next. And she goes, what's that? And I go, a documentary.
When I grow up, I want to be a police officer. When I grow up, I want to work for the FBI so I could go on secret missions.
I want to be a police officer so I can keep people safe.
I want to be a police officer so I can have nightmares. I'm so sad all the time.
You can't just toss me aside.
I don't understand what's happening to me. I'm not the same anymore.
Disassociated.
Suicide.
Suicide. I'm not a piece of garbage.
Help me. Help me.
After 5 years interviewing police officers across the country, Debbie's documentary, Code 9, Officer Needs Assistance, reveals the tragic stories of how PTSD affects police officers, both professionally and personally, how it can make even suicide seem like a way out.
Did you ever consider killing yourself?
I'm going to be honest, back then, yeah, after I got arrested, probably, yeah, thought about it, but wouldn't do it. Now, the question would be, did I do reckless behavior thinking I could commit reckless suicide? Like going to areas where I shouldn't be, where there's, bad people, lots of guns, stuff like that. What am I doing there? I'm retired. I should be sitting in a chair collecting a pension check, enjoying life.
I think Michael wished that he was dead, that if something happened, then he got killed, that would make everything so much easier. I believe that Michael was on, trying to figure out a way how we can end it all. And I think he's just... It's just not fair.
Who let him down?
The department. The department let him down. Because had they offered him the proper training, he would never be in the position that he is in today. His department let him down.
Up next, how one police department is leading the way and changing the culture.
I hope that wellness piece in 5 years is just part of the culture and it's just part of our routine.
Retired New York State Trooper Mike meditates every day, trying to find peace of mind after being diagnosed with PTSD. Until just a few years ago, he abused drugs and alcohol, looking for an escape from the haunting memories of responding to tragic emergencies.
Are you sober now?
Yes, 100%. I had to come to the realization that if I kept on the path I was going, I would lose this family, and I did not want to do that. I don't want to be known as a mental case, because PTSD drove me to become a mental case.
On the other side of the country, in Mesa, Arizona, retired police officer Nate Schlitz, diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, leads a PTSD peer support group for other officers.
Do you think your symptoms have been improving lately?
Yes. I was not able to do simple tasks right after the shooting, and I felt like I was going crazy. And I don't feel that way anymore.
Good.
What do you tell them?
The big thing is letting them know that they're not alone, even though everyone has gone through a different incident. Usually the symptoms are the same.
Most police departments are ignoring the crisis of PTSD, with an estimated 100,000 active duty police officers in America suffering symptoms and still on the job.
There's a risk to society because these police officers are highly stressed out, anxiety probably off the chart, flashbacks coming. So, you know, there's going to be a risk to society, absolutely. When I see something on TV about a police officer and let it be overactive with kids, I really would like to know what just happened to that guy earlier on in his shift or maybe this past week.
I think that there's potential for stress injuries to lead to more aggressive behavior, which is another reason to try to get it treated sooner.
The risk to public safety from those who swear an oath to provide that security is one reason Schlitz decided to fight for change inside his former department, the city of Mesa Police.
We're the third largest police department in Arizona.
The new chief of the Mesa Police Department, John Meza, is getting the message. He's taking bold steps, almost unheard of in law enforcement, and putting PTSD on the forefront of his department's agenda.
What changes have you made in regards to helping officers deal with some of these traumatic incidents since you've become chief?
We added a officer to our peer support team. We had one, and we added a second one to get more of an outreach to our officer. Anytime we have a critical incident like a shooting or a bad accident or a homicide, we will call peer support out to go out there and talk to the officer.
The Mesa Police Department has also increased leave for officers involved in traumatic incidents and added stress training to the curriculum at the police academy.
And I wasn't going to let my partner get hurt, so I decided to shoot
the recent
driver.
Code 9 documentary on PTSD, which features Nate Schlitz's story, has also been shown to Mesa officers.
Courageous. While I'm watching the film, and when I see him, you know, I'm almost to tears to think, hey, what this guy, my friend, went through.
Are you seeing a cultural shift within that police department?
I think there is a definite change that's happened in the last even 6 months.
5 years from now, I come back and check in on the Mesa Police Department. How's it different because of this?
Hopefully, we have less PTSD retirements because we're helping officers along the way, not waiting till they're having that critical issue. So I hope that wellness piece in 5 years is just part of the culture and it's just part of our routine.
But Chief Meza faces challenges, budget cuts, not enough funding for staff counselors, and continued concern for retirees who didn't get treatment or acknowledgement of their PTSD.
No department in the United States has ever recognized that an officer died from PTSD. Not one. Not one department. That's inconceivable. We've lost, if you take our figures, last 10 years, you've lost about 1,400 officers of suicide.
Ron Clark with Badge of Life says these figures don't take into account retired police, so it's likely much higher.
We know there's accumulative traumas. There's cops out there that still wake up in nightmares and everything. We could fill a stadium with officers that are probably retired with PTSD.
You're neutral, right?
Former officers like Mike, who still struggles to stop the post-traumatic slideshow in his mind.
How do you get through to every day?
You got to go one day at a time. Like, done this interview, I'm going to go get in the car, I'm going to drive and get a cup of coffee. You know, what am I going to see that'll be a trigger?
Triggers are all over out there.
Oh, all over. Because it's impossible, again, like I said, impossible to take that magic pill and get all this out of your head.
Still seeking peace, admitting some days are hard, but determined to be a PTSD survivor, unlike too many of his brothers and sisters in blue. Adam May, Al Jazeera.